My name is Nathan Briggs, and I work the night shift out of the Quinault district on the western side of Olympic National Park. Most people who visit this part of Washington only see it during the day. They see the lake, the old trees, the short trails near the ranger station, the moss hanging from the branches like green rope, and the rain moving softly through the canopy. They take pictures of elk standing in the road and laugh when their shoes sink into the mud. They don't see what the forest looks like after midnight. At night, the place stops feeling like a park. The roads go empty first. Then the campgrounds settle down one by one. Porch lights on cabins disappear behind rain. The lake turns black. The trail signs become pale rectangles in the dark, and the trees close in so tightly around the roads that the headlights only show you the next 30 feet. That is when our shift starts. On paper, my job is simple. I answer calls after the day crew goes home. I check closed roads, respond to accidents, help lost hikers, look for campers who don't come back before dark, and keep an eye on river levels when the rain gets bad. Most calls are normal. A family misses the turn back to the campground. A fisherman slips on wet rocks and breaks an ankle. Someone drives too fast through standing water and buries their car in a ditch. A backpacker underestimates how cold the forest gets after sunset. We handle those calls the way any ranger would. We grab the right gear, log the response, radio dispatch, and bring people back if we can. But there are other calls. The ones nobody writes clearly in the reports. The ones older rangers talk about only after the doors are locked and the station lights have been turned low. I learned about those during my first winter in Quinault. The ranger who trained me was named Roy Calder. Roy had worked nights for almost 20 years. He was the kind of man who could stand in hard rain for an hour and look no more bothered than if someone had spilled coffee on his sleeve. He kept his boots cleaner than anyone else at the station, not because he cared how they looked, but because, as he put it, mud tells on you if you know how to read it. On my first night, he showed me the usual things: where the rope bags were stored, which radio channel reached the coast, which bridge washed out first when the river came up, how to check the thermal camera batteries before leaving the station, which roads looked passable on a map but turned into soup after 3 straight days of rain. Then, sometime after 1 in the morning, he poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot in the back room, sat across from me and said, "There are 5 things you need to remember if you're going to work nights here." I thought he meant weather protocol. He didn't. He gave me 5 rules. None of them were written down. None of them appeared in training. Every one of them sounded ridiculous. The first rule was this: if the fog comes uphill from the river, do not drive through it. I waited for him to smile. Roy didn't. He just looked past me toward the dark windows and said, "Regular fog settles, that kind climbs." I didn't believe him. Not really. I was polite enough not to say that out loud, but I didn't believe him. I had worked seasonal fire watch in Montana before coming to Olympic. I had been around weather. Fog did strange things in mountains and valleys. It moved through timber, wrapped around roads, and turned headlights useless. That didn't make it supernatural. Roy must have seen it on my face. "You don't have to believe me tonight," he said. "Just remember it." 3 months later, I did. It was late February, during one of those storms that never seemed to end. The rain had been falling for 4 days. Not heavy all the time, but constant. The kind of rain that got inside your cuffs and under your collar and made every building smell faintly of wet wool. The call came in just after midnight. A couple from Tacoma had driven down an old service road near North Fork and slid their car into a drainage ditch. No injuries. Engine still running. They had heat, but the passenger was pregnant and dispatch didn't want them sitting there until morning. Roy and I took Unit 3. Before we left, he made me check the truck twice. Flood kit, trauma bag, spare jackets, tow strap, road flares, thermal blankets, chainsaw. He moved slowly, like rushing was bad luck. The station lights disappeared behind us as we turned onto the wet road. Rain ticked against the windshield. The wipers dragged back and forth, smearing red flashes from the light bar across the glass. The forest pressed close on both sides. For the first 20 minutes, it felt like any other response. Roy drove with one hand low on the wheel, shoulders relaxed, eyes fixed on the road. I listened to the radio, marked mileposts, and tried not to think about how easily a person could walk 10 yards off that road and never be seen from it again. Then Roy slowed down. At first, I thought there was water over the pavement. Then, I saw the fog. It came out of the river valley below us in a thick white sheet, moving between the trunks and across the road. But it was not drifting sideways. It was climbing. The fog rolled uphill against the rain, pushing through the trees in slow waves. It crossed the road 20 yards ahead of the truck and kept rising into the timber on the other side. Roy stopped. "We wait here," he said. I looked at the clock on the dash. They're less than 2 miles ahead. They can wait. They called because she's pregnant. Roy turned off the light bar. The red flashes vanished and the forest became darker than before. "We wait," he said again. The radio crackled before I could answer. A woman's voice came through. "Ranger Unit, is that you?" I grabbed the mic. "This is Park Unit 3. We're en route. Stay inside your vehicle." "We can see you," she said. I looked through the windshield. There was nothing ahead except fog. Roy's hand moved toward the radio, but he didn't touch it. The woman spoke again. "You're right there. Why are you stopping?" Her voice sounded close, too clear, no static, no dispatch relay. Roy leaned back in his seat and said, very quietly, "Don't answer." Inside the fog, headlights appeared. 2 pale circles. They came on one at a time, like eyes opening. I felt my mouth go dry. The headlights moved closer without engine noise. A truck shape formed around them. Same size as ours. Same roof rack. Same light bar across the top, though it was not flashing. The other truck stopped in the middle of the road. Rain fell through it strangely, as if the drops were passing behind a pane of dirty glass. Then the driver's side window lowered. A man sat behind the wheel. For a second, I thought my mind had filled in the details wrong. Then he turned his face toward us. It was Roy. Same gray beard, same rain jacket, same posture, same flat, tired eyes. In the passenger seat was me. My own face looked back through the fog. The copy of me raised one hand and tapped slowly on the inside of the glass. Once, twice. 3 times. Roy put our truck in reverse. He backed up without turning around, using only the mirrors. The tires hissed over wet pavement. The fog pressed forward as if it wanted to keep contact with us. I watched the other truck until it disappeared into the white. We reversed almost 100 yards before Roy stopped. The radio clicked again. This time, the woman's voice sounded irritated. "Please don't leave us here." Roy reached down and turned the radio off. We sat in the dark with the engine running. The fog stayed where it was, stretched across the road like a closed gate. Neither of us spoke for nearly 40 minutes. Then, all at once, the fog dropped. It did not drift away. It sank back into the valley. One moment the road ahead was blocked. The next, it was clear, black and wet under the headlights. Roy turned the radio back on, called dispatch, and asked them to confirm the stranded couple's last transmission. Dispatch said they had not transmitted again since the original call. When we reached them, their car was exactly where dispatch said it would be. The woman was cold and scared, but fine. Her husband kept apologizing. They had not seen our headlights. They had not spoken to us on the radio. They had been sitting there listening to rain hit the roof. On the drive back, I asked Roy what the other truck was. He did not answer right away. He kept both hands on the wheel and watched the road. Finally, he said, something that wanted us to think help was already there. That was the first time I believed one of the rules. The second rule was harder to ignore. If you hear knocking from inside a hollow tree, knock once and leave. Roy told me that rule like it was no different than checking fuel levels before a response. I thought about it for weeks after the fog incident. The rule bothered me because it was too specific. Fog could be weather. Voices could be radio interference. But knocking from inside a tree felt like something from a story children tell each other to stay awake. Then came the missing hiker call near Graves Creek. Her name was Emily Parker, 21 years old, college student. She had been hiking with two friends when she stopped to take photos of a nurse log covered in mushrooms. Her friends walked ahead, assuming she was behind them. By the time they noticed she was gone, the trail had already gone dark. Roy and I joined two law enforcement rangers at the trailhead around 9:40 p.m. The rain had stopped, but the forest was still dripping. Every branch released water in slow intervals. Our headlamps caught mist hanging low between the trunks. The trail was soft enough that our boots left deep prints. Searches at night are slower than people think. You don't just crash through the forest yelling names. You stop, listen, check mud, look for broken ferns, displaced moss, disturbed leaf litter. You mark where you leave the main trail. You keep your radio clipped high so it doesn't get soaked. You do everything carefully because one lost person is bad, but two lost people is worse. Roy took the lower side of the trail. I worked a few yards above him. Every few minutes, one of us called Emily's name. The forest swallowed the sound. After half an hour, we found her camera lens cap near a rotting cedar. That gave us hope. Then we heard the knocking. 3 slow knocks. Not from ahead, not from behind, from inside the cedar. Roy froze. So did I. The tree was enormous, dead at the top, hollowed by age and weather. A long vertical split opened near the base. Inside was blackness. The knocking came again. 3 hits. Then a girl's voice whispered, "Help me." My hands tightened around the flashlight. It sounded like she was right there. Roy looked at me. His expression did not change, but I could see the warning in his eyes. The voice whispered again, "I can't move." I wanted to believe it was Emily. That was the worst part. Every piece of training I had told me to move toward the voice. Locate the victim, assess injuries, call for medical, keep her talking. Roy stepped closer to the tree, but not too close. He raised one gloved hand and knocked once on the outside of the trunk. The sound was small and dull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something inside the tree knocked back. Once. The whole trunk trembled. Water shook loose from the branches above us and fell like sudden rain. The girl's voice stopped. Something breathed inside the hollow. It was a deep, dragging inhale, like air being pulled through wet cloth. Roy backed away. I followed. Then the voice changed. "Nathan?" It was my mother's voice. My mother had been dead for 6 years. I stopped so abruptly that Roy bumped into me. "Nathan," the voice said from inside the tree. "I'm cold." My flashlight shook in my hand. Roy grabbed the back of my jacket and pulled hard enough to nearly tear the fabric. "Move," he said. I moved. The voice followed us down the trail. Not loudly, not desperately. Just close enough to hear between the drops of water falling from the branches. "Nathan, don't leave me." Roy did not let go of my jacket until we were 50 yards away. We found Emily Parker just after midnight, curled beneath a nurse log less than 200 yards from the trailhead. She had slipped down a muddy bank, hit her head, and become disoriented. She had no memory of calling for help. When we got her out, Roy asked one question. "Did you hear anyone knocking?" She looked at him like she didn't understand. "No," she said. "I heard you calling my name, but it sounded like you were underground." Roy wrote nothing about that in the report. For 3 nights after that, I dreamed about my mother's voice coming from inside wetwood. I started sleeping with the radio off. Rule 3 involved owls. If an owl lands on a trail sign and faces away from you, turn back immediately. By summer, I had worked enough nights to stop questioning Roy out loud. That didn't mean I understood any of it. I just accepted that understanding was not required to stay alive. That rule came up during a late July search near Pony Bridge. A solo backpacker named Harris Cole had activated his emergency beacon after dark. The signal bounced around the valley because of the terrain, but dispatch narrowed it to a section of trail above the river. Roy and I went in on foot with a medical kit, stretcher roll, and thermal camera. The air was warmer than usual. No rain, no wind. The river below us made a steady, low sound in the dark. About a mile in, we reached a wooden trail sign. An owl sat on top of it. Large, gray, completely still. Its body faced down the trail ahead of us. It was turned away. Roy stopped so fast I nearly walked into him. "We're done," he said. The beacon receiver in my hand chirped. "Strong signal, straight ahead." I looked past the sign. Between the trees, a red light blinked once, then again. "Roy," I said, "that's the beacon." "No," he said, "that's the reason for the rule." The owl did not move. The receiver chirped faster. The red light blinked in rhythm with it. Then a man called from the trail ahead. "Rangers?" His voice was faint but clear. "I'm over here." I looked at Roy. His face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. He reached over and switched off the receiver. The chirping continued. It came from the forest now. The owl turned its head halfway around. One black eye looked at us over its back. Roy began walking backward. I did the same. The red light moved closer. It stayed low to the ground, weaving between ferns and roots. Not like someone carrying a beacon, more like something crawling with the light held in its mouth. The man called again. "Please, I think my leg's broken." Every word was exactly what we expected to hear. That made it worse. Roy whispered, "It knows the shape of a rescue." We kept backing up until the owl lifted from the sign and flew silently into the trees behind us. Only then did Roy turn around. We walked fast, not running, but close. The voice followed us for several minutes, getting frustrated. "Hey!" Then closer. "Don't leave." Then, in a flat tone that did not sound injured at all, "I can see your lights." The next morning, a day crew found Harris Cole nearly 4 miles from that trail sign, alive but hypothermic, with a sprained knee. His beacon was still attached to his pack. He said he had activated it once and then passed out under a tarp. When I asked Roy what would have happened if we had gone past the owl, he said, "We would have carried something out, but it wouldn't have been Harris." He said it while rinsing mud from his boots, like he was talking about weather. Rule 4 was the one that stayed with me longest. If your flashlight catches rain falling upward, turn off every light and count to 60. I saw that one without Roy. It was November, nearly a year after I started nights. Roy had taken a week of leave to visit his daughter in Spokane, and I was paired with a new ranger named Ellie Ward. Ellie was sharp, calm, and too practical to enjoy ghost stories. She had worked search and rescue in Colorado before coming to Olympic and had the kind of confidence that made people trust her quickly. I gave her the rules on her first night. She listened politely. When I finished, she said, "So what do you actually do when weird things happen?" I told her the truth. You follow the rule before you decide whether you believe it. The upward rain happened during a bridge check on a service road after a windstorm. A maintenance crew had reported debris piling against the supports. Ellie and I drove out just after 2 a.m. The rain had eased to a mist, but water was moving fast under the bridge. Too fast. We parked at the near end and stepped out. The air smelled like cedar, river mud, and torn leaves. Branches scraped together overhead. Ellie checked the downstream side while I photographed the upstream supports. Then my flashlight beam caught the rain. The drops were rising. Thin silver lines lifted from the road, from the bridge rails, from the wet hood of the truck, all moving upward into the dark. For a second, I just stared. Then my body remembered before my mind did. "Lights off," I said. Ellie turned toward me. "What?" "Now." I clicked off my flashlight, then the truck lights, then reached through the open window and killed the dash glow. Ellie turned hers off half a second later. Darkness swallowed the bridge. "Count," I whispered. We counted under our breath. 1, 2, 3. By 10, the river went silent. That was the first impossible thing. The water was still there. I could smell it. I could feel the cold coming off it. but the sound was gone. By 20, footsteps began on the far side of the bridge. Bare feet on wet wood. Slow, heavy. Ellie stopped counting. I grabbed her wrist hard. She started again. 26, 27. The footsteps moved closer. By 40, something was standing in front of us on the bridge. I could not see it, but I knew where it was. The air changed there, colder, denser, like a person had opened a freezer door in the dark. Water dripped from it onto the boards. At 53, Ellie's radio clicked on by itself. A voice came through. It was my voice. "Nathan," it said, "look at me." Ellie made a small sound in her throat. I kept counting. 57. 58. The thing on the bridge leaned closer. I felt wet breath touch my face. 59. 60. Rain crashed down all at once. The river roared back so loudly it made Ellie flinch. The truck lights were still off. Our flashlights were still off, but the world had returned. When I turned my light on, the bridge was empty. Long, narrow footprints crossed the wet boards toward us. None led away. Ellie did not speak until we were back inside the truck. Then she said, "I counted 62. I looked at her. She was staring straight ahead. "I panicked," she said. "I skipped some numbers." I didn't know what to say to that. The next morning, maintenance closed the bridge. By noon, the center span had dropped 6 inches. By evening, it was gone. Ellie believed the rules after that. She also stopped working nights before Christmas. She told the supervisor it was because of family. Maybe it was. People are allowed to leave without explaining what the forest did to them. The 5th rule was the last one Roy ever gave me. If you find a campsite with no fire, no people, and food still cooking, do not touch anything. Mark the location and leave before the food burns. I hated that rule from the beginning because it sounded almost harmless. A strange camp, a stove left on, food burning. That felt like negligence, not danger. Roy told me, "That's why people touch it." The rule proved itself during his last month on the job. He had already filed retirement papers by then. He didn't make a speech about it. He didn't put a date on the board. He just started giving away small things from his locker. Spare gloves, a compass, old laminated maps. One night in January, a couple camping near the lake reported smelling wood smoke somewhere beyond the closed nature loop. There were no permitted campsites in that section, and with flood warnings active, we had to check it. Roy and I went on foot. The forest was soaked and cold. Our lights moved over ferns, dripping logs, and black pools of standing water. The rain had stopped, but the trees were still shedding it in slow, uneven drops. After 20 minutes, I smelled smoke, then coffee, then bacon. It was so ordinary that for a moment I felt relieved. We followed the smell into a small clearing. There was a tent, 2 folding chairs, a blue tarp tied between trees. A camp stove sat on a flat rock. Bacon sizzled in a pan. A small coffee pot steamed beside it. There was no fire, no people, no footprints in the mud. Roy stopped at the edge of the clearing. The bacon popped in the pan. One strip curled black at the end. I wanted badly to step in and turn off the stove. That urge was almost physical. Roy took orange tape from his pocket and tied it to a branch. "We're leaving," he said. From inside the tent, a sleeping bag shifted. Then another. 2 shapes rose slowly, as if people inside the bags were sitting up. But the bags were zipped shut. The coffee pot rattled. Its lid jumped once. A man's voice called from inside the tent. "Rangers?" Roy backed away. I followed. A woman's voice said, "We're still here." The bacon burned. Smoke thickened, but the smell changed. Not burned meat, wet leaves, river mud, old blood. The tent flap opened wider. No hand touched it. Roy's voice stayed calm. "Don't answer." We backed through the ferns. The voices followed only to the edge of the clearing. Then the stove clicked off. The smoke vanished. So did the smell. The next morning, we returned with 2 law enforcement rangers. The orange tape was still there. The campsite was gone. No tarp, no tent, no stove. Only 2 flat rectangles in the moss where something had pressed down. Roy retired 11 days later. On his last night, he handed me a green notebook. Inside were dates, locations, names, and short notes written in pencil. Fog crossing North Fork Road, vehicle duplicated. 2 seasonal staff missing. Knocking from cedar near Graves Creek. Volunteer heard son's voice. Entered hollow. No recovery. Owl facing trail. Beacon mimic. Search team separated. Rain rising at bridge. Maintenance worker found downstream. Lungs full of silt. Camp with cooking food. Do not approach after smoke changes. There were pages of them. Years of incidents. Some had names I recognized from old plaques and station photos. I asked Roy why he never showed it to me earlier. He looked tired then, older than I had ever seen him. Because before the first rule proves itself, he said, the notebook just makes you think the old ranger is crazy. Then he put on his rain jacket and left before sunrise. I've been running nights for 3 years now. The station is the same. Same bad coffee, same wet maps, same radio that hisses when the weather comes down from the mountains. New rangers still arrive with clean boots and polite smiles. They still think the forest is dangerous in ways they understand. I give them the normal training first. I show them the trucks, the medical kits, the road closure signs, the flood maps, the spare batteries, and the channels that work when the others fail. Then, after midnight, when the visitor center is dark and the lake is only a black shape beyond the windows, I tell them the 5 rules. Most of them laugh. Not loudly. Just enough to show they don't believe me. I never argue. I know the forest will do that part for me. Sooner or later, the fog comes uphill from the river. One night, something knocks from inside a hollow tree. An owl lands on a trail sign facing the wrong direction. Rain starts falling the wrong way. Someone finds a warm campsite where nobody should be camping. And after that, they stop laughing. People think the wilderness is honest because it is old. It isn't. It can lie with familiar voices. It can copy headlights. It can wear the shape of someone who needs help. It can make rescue feel like duty right up until the moment you step too close. That is the hardest thing to teach. The rules are not there to make us heartless. They are there because some things in the forest have learned how decent people behave. They know we follow voices. They know we move toward lights. They know we reach for stoves, unzip tents, answer radios, and run toward anyone calling for help. So we do the only thing we can. We slow down, we listen, we obey the rules before we understand them. And when the forest goes quiet all at once, we remember that not every call wants to be answered.